Hi everyone. The following video is an example of removing the interior trim panel from a Porsche 991. For this you'll need a couple of plastic trim tools and a small hex bit. I think it was about a 4mm. Start by getting your trim tools, and there's several trim pieces to take off. Start with the airbag cover and control module cover in the front. Just use a thin trim pry tool, go around the edges of this and gently pry up. You'll feel it pop off rather easily. And then just put that off to the side once you have it off. There's 4 or 5 different tabs that are retention clips. Next, you want to take another trim tool, remove the small plastic trim piece that's underneath the door handle. This pries out very easily. I was surprised at how easy this is to pop out. Just one little pull on it and it comes right out. Again, just put that to the side. And the next piece we're going to, it's a little more tricky. It's the window triangle. And this one, you want to be careful. It has a weird reverse J hook, I'll call it, tab at the bottom. But you want to lift it straight up. You know, pry from underneath, get underneath of it, and start pulling straight up. And then you'll notice that the reverse hook, you kind of have to take the whole thing towards the front of the car and wiggle it up and down. You don't want to twist it because it's a thin J hook and it's rather long. So once you get that done, just pop that out and go to the last trim piece, which is at the rear of the door there. This one I use two trim tools. It's a very tight fit, so you need to get something behind it, and then once you do it, it pops out rather easily. 2 tabs holding that in place. Now we have all the trim pieces off. We're going to remove 4 hex screws. You should be able to use like a 4mm, I can't recall if it was 4 or maybe 3, hex bit with a 3 or 4 inch extension. And there's 4. There's 2 at the front near the control modules of the door. You can see I'm taking the second one off there. The third one is deep behind the door handle pull. That's where you really need the extension for. And I just use a 4mm bit on a screw handle. You can see this one behind the door handle is a little bit deeper. But again, these come off pretty easy. They do have a torque factory setting. I'll explain in a second here when we go back to do the reinstall. That's the third screw, and then the final screw, believe it or not, it's only 4 holding it on, is at the very back of the door behind the plate you had just removed. And just take those off, set those aside. Now at this point, the whole door panel is loose. It won't fall off. The next thing you have to do is remove some of the electrical connections. I'm up at the front now. There's a blue connector for the control module. There's a lever. It's a blue with a purple lever clamp on it. And do that. And then there's another controller for, I believe, the mirror, and it's a black one. Remove that. And the last 2 things you have to do, there's an electrical connection for the window controls. But first, and you can take that off if you want, but what I did first was remove the door handle pull. And this wire, you have to pull towards the front of the car and release it. There's a white connector you have to release. And then once you have those done, you can just pop the whole door panel off. And I hold the panel up for a minute so you can see the reverse side. It's completely a plastic piece. On the other side, it's covered in leather and plastic. and that's it. That's all you had to do to release the door panel. Just be very careful with it, of course. You don't want to scratch the other side. But I found it's pretty durable. Rugged piece, stiff. But you can see there's a lot of little things in here that if they get loose, they can cause rattles. Here's the other side of the door. You can see the speakers in the front, the control modules, door handle pull. And behind that black plastic is you want to remove the actual door handle, the exterior handle, or the lock. So the reverse of this is installing, and there's a torque setting from the factory, but really hand tightening is fine. To put it back on, the trick is at the very bottom there are some hinges that actually sit down into the door, and you want to keep it from falling, tilting over, but for the most part it'll stay in place while you reattach. So you just do the reverse. You want to make sure you get the window control panel wire reconnected, do the door handle pull. But you'll see I'm doing those first. Door handle pull's a little tricky because it's not, you don't have a lot of slack in the pull, so you have to wiggle the door panel around a bit so that you can get it back seated back in the right spot. It's covered in like a lithium grease or something like that, or some kind of lubricant, so it gets all over your fingers. You probably easy clean off the leather if you do get some on there, but you can see every once in a while I look and I have a little bit of smudge on there. But then once that's in, you can tilt the panel back up. You need to make sure you reconnect the controllers at the front of the door panel. Again, fairly easy. They make everything really pretty accessible, not very tricky. And you want to make sure that the whole panel, once you have the connections back in place, gets seated back in the right spot. And you can feel it. It's engineered really well. You can feel it actually kind of wiggle down into place firmly. And I've done this a couple times now. I've never had a rattle afterwards if you do it right and get everything tightened up. Make sure you don't drop anything down in there. There really isn't much else that'll get free. You can see here I'm seating it down, and then once you push it down, it just kind of slides right into place. Very simple. You can see there, and it's nice and firmly held in place. So then you go back to reattaching the screws, and I just do them in reverse order from what I did. I do the rear first, do the edge of the door. Or the front first. Now you can see I have to do the electrical connection there. Just it's a hinge. Clamps it down into place. And just make sure it's seated firmly. I've done this, like I said, a couple times, disconnect everything, never had any fault codes or anything else come up or need to readjust any electronics. Here you can see there's a plug. If that is the hole to undo the screw for the rear view mirror on the exterior. There was a rubber plug that I noticed had been loose, so I just reattached it. It's a weather-tight seal. In another DIY, I removed the rear mirror, and you'll see how I got to that. Removing the rear view mirror doesn't require removing the whole door panel. Then I'm putting the screws back in. I hand tighten them. As I tighten, I just make sure the bottom of the door, the trim piece isn't out of line. Second one, like I said, I hand tighten, but there is a factory setting that I listed a few moments ago. I don't really see a need to get a torque wrench out for this. You don't want to over tighten them anyway. 2 screws at the front, and there's a screw again behind the door handle. Do that one. The trim piece, the window triangle. It really just snaps into place. It's pretty firm. It won't pop out anymore if you get it back in correctly. I don't know if the order of doing these things is so important as just making sure everything is seated properly and in the right spot. Make sure it is tight. Tighten it behind the handle. Glass screws at the back of the door. Right where that screw is, by the way, there's an electrical connector there for the alarm or auto locking LED that's right there at the blinker, the little circle there. If you ever want to change the color of that or change it out, electrical connection's right there. It's very easy to get to. Just hand tighten that, get it nice and firm. You're going to pop a couple more trim pieces in place. Just snap into place. You know, you can see I'll just hit it with the heel of my hand a little bit just to pop it in. It snaps. These are pretty rugged pieces. It's going to be pretty hard to damage them unless you get really careless. Back and do the other pieces in the front. Just snaps in place. Make sure the door handle functions properly after I do that. This is the larger piece up over the airbag and the controllers. It also just snaps in place. It's very easy to put back in. Be careful you don't bind up any of the tabs and actually break one off, but I don't even think breaking one off would do much harm. There's 6 or 7 on the back of that thing. And it just snaps in. I turn the car ignition over just to do a quick up and down of the window, make sure I don't hear any weird noises or anything else that means something might be out of whack or rubbing. And that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching. For more, look at my YouTube channel and also my blog. Appreciate it. Thank you.